So it is very hard to believe, but at this point in time, we are fastly approaching the 6th full year of the Nintendo Switch being sold and available on the marketplace, and clearly no one is debating how successful this console has been for Nintendo at over 111 million total units sold. But there is some brand new data that has just recently hit the internet that has a lot of people discussing the idea on whether or not we are at a stark slowdown point for this console's momentum. And in today's video, we have to break down what that data is that has the idea floating around that 2023 may indeed need to be the year that Nintendo launches whatever is next in new Nintendo Switch hardware. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now, as I mentioned, guys, today we are discussing that fun topic that you've probably seen talked about once or twice on the internet. Yes, we are talking about the prospect of new Nintendo Switch hardware and why it might actually start to make sense in a year like 2023, as we are fastly approaching the tail end of 2022 at this point. And you know that means we are fastly approaching 6 full years of the Nintendo Switch being available, as that console launched back in March of 2017. And while we have seen various models of the Switch so far, such as the Switch Lite edition that was announced and sold in 2019, then followed by the Nintendo Switch OLED model in 2021, which you could identify even with those two consoles launch patterns, that every 2 years we've gotten some new variation or new model of the Switch since it was originally sold. And that might lead into a little bit of evidence for the argument that 2023 makes sense for Nintendo to launch something new. Those systems, while nice to have as part of a ongoing family of Nintendo Switch consoles, absolutely did nothing in the way of adding in additional power or performance to games that you see hotly debated online, with upcoming releases like Bayonetta 3 having a lot of talk around the frame rate of the game and how smooth and fluid it looks, and that there may even be noticeable frame dips. And we've definitely seen our fair share of new Nintendo Switch titles that are big releases struggle after launch, or at least you can just on the surface level say that these do not look like 2022 games. Now, am I big on graphics and that is the entire experience for me at the end of the day? No, I am not. I have always been a gameplay first minded gamer. However, there is absolutely a point where you can just objectively say that the hardware is aging. The Tegra X1 that is in the Nintendo Switch base model and all of the models of the Nintendo Switch that are sold today was originally developed in 2015, then put into the Nintendo Switch in 2017. And I do think you can say that technology has come a long way in those years, and having something more powerful might be nice for developers to be able to hit more consistent frame rates. The big upcoming marquee games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that are the holiday launch titles for the Nintendo Switch even have some heat pointed at them from Nintendo Life on how they run. And so all of that to say, it is not a surprising stance that some gamers out there notice and realize in a vastly quickly evolving landscape where all of these other handheld gaming devices are being sold, not as direct competition to the Nintendo Switch in my opinion, but you do have a changing landscape with machines like the Steam Deck and all of these other Logitech G Cloud, plus Razer's new gaming device that they just unveiled. Like, clearly people know that portable gaming is a hot button item right now that consumers want and value, and everybody is chasing it. So Nintendo does objectively need to stay competitive in this space with how their games run and perform and look, and also what kind of third-party titles are even possible on the platform. Because while there may be some lazy development that takes place with games like Alan Wake Remastered that quite honestly runs worse than the original Xbox 360 release, yet that game is still being sold and marketed as a remastered title, it clearly has hurdles that those developers were not able to jump over on the Nintendo Switch, or did not put in the time and effort into jumping over them because of the budget constraints, time constraints, or whatever may have caused this game to release in a poor state that was ultimately just shadow dropped. But again, this is more mounting evidence that yes, we are on aging hardware at this point with the 2017 chipset of the original Nintendo Switch. Now, the reason this is being broadly talked about online recently does have to do with the fact that there is some brand new NPD sales data that is out on the Nintendo Switch and how it's performing month over month compared to the competition being Sony and Microsoft. And you may know that history has shown Nintendo at the top of the charts in both unit and dollar sales month in and month out. There have been plenty of months where Sony has won the dollar sales side of things at just having a $400 and $500 console tier available, but we are now starting to see more frequently Sony walk away with the dollar sales. But Nintendo has always historically been ahead of Microsoft and the Xbox Series consoles in terms of dollar sales, and you can now see the following posted up over from Matt Piscatella on Twitter, where he highlights the following and says, US NPD hardware sales in September increased 19% when compared to a year ago, the third consecutive month of double-digit percentage growth. Improved supply of PlayStation 5 was a primary driver for the increase, with PlayStation 5 ranking first in both unit and dollar sales. Nintendo Switch ranked second in unit sales among hardware platforms in the month, while Xbox Series placed second in dollar sales. Now, if you keep up with the Nintendo news cycle, and you probably do if you're on this channel, you may remember different comments from Mr. Furukawa himself in recent investors meetings, claiming that supply was a big issue and a big constraint on why they may or may not be able to hit their annual sales forecast for this fiscal year. And while there are absolutely most likely markets that do have struggles with Nintendo Switches and keeping them in stock, I can personally say from the US Amazon market and just the biggest retailers that you walk into or order online, most of them have all models of the Switch in stock and available for purchase at regular retail at any point in time. And I do think that plays into this conversation of the supply constraints that we saw during the height of the pandemic starting to ultimately now wear down some, and we are kind of getting back into somewhat of a groove of seeing these consoles that used to be impossible to find readily available and in stock. And while we're not there yet for the Series X and PlayStation 5, they are absolutely ramping up production in a big way as they are now deeper into this current console generation. And that's where I think you have to step back and pull the supply constraint argument out of the table and really objectively look at the question: has Nintendo hit that install base, at least roughly the number of 111 million plus units that most of the people who want a Switch have a Switch right now already? And is it ultimately time to dive into that part of the base that would be willing to upgrade if you release something more powerful? Now, then we have to have the conversation of history with Nintendo and how they've launched their hardware so far, because historically it aligns with new Zelda games. You can see this tracing all the way back to Twilight Princess on the Wii, where they actually delayed that game an entire full year past all of the previous delays that it had seen up to that point in time to make sure that that launched alongside of new hardware, with of course two versions coming out, being for one for the GameCube, the existing console generation, and one to launch the brand new hardware on the Wii. Now you then look at something more recent like Zelda Breath of the Wild, which by all accounts is the biggest blockbuster sales number that we've ever seen a Zelda game achieve, and that launched the original Nintendo Switch hardware and was a big part of the marketing around it, because the new hot big open world Zelda game that did by all accounts blow away everybody's expectations for what that project would ultimately be is the perfect reason to drive people who maybe aren't even always Nintendo gamers in to go buy the console to run that game in the best way, as of course it did also launch on the Wii U, but you knew that the Switch would be a superior experience with the portability factor intact. And we even saw Nintendo essentially use Link's Awakening as a strong marketing pull for people to pick up the Switch Lite when it launched in 2019. And are we about to see history repeat itself with a Tears of the Kingdom launch in 2023, a May 12th launch, mind you, in 2023? Is that when Nintendo pulls back the curtain? And clearly they would have to do it earlier in the year, something like a February or March, which would align with when sometimes they do Nintendo Directs, although I can see them not featuring this console at the Nintendo Direct and doing it as a standalone trailer as they typically like to do. Is that the window where we get something that is new for the Nintendo Switch hardware lineup? Now, I personally think when you look at this from a business perspective, that makes all the sense in the world. The existing sales momentum for the Switch is starting to slow down some. We've seen Nintendo have vast success with consoles like the Wii and essentially hold on to them too long before releasing what was next, and then not market the communication around the upgrade to the console user base correctly. And then we had the situation of the Wii U where that console completely flopped at 13 million total units sold compared to the previous success of the 100+ million that they had with the Wii, and they have to navigate this situation that they are in with the Switch very strategically, because we have seen Nintendo come hot off the heels of a fantastic console generation and fall flat on their face in what's next for them. And one thing that I think is an interesting conversation to have now that we are in the Switch era of gaming is I don't think we have to have that traditional hard generational break. Maybe it happens at some point in the more distant future, but that heavily rumored Switch Pro could be the Nintendo Switch 2, and it does take us into technically the next phase, but it's still backwards compatible with all the existing library of games, and you may even have the vast majority of first-party Nintendo games developed for both platforms. They just simply run and look better on the newer hardware and supports things like modern resolutions with 4K via not native but via DLSS upscaling. I think that's possible with something like a newer chipset sold in a Nintendo Switch developed by Nvidia that we've seen leaks around. It doesn't mean that 2023 is for sure the year that this is going to happen, but with all of the talk online around slowing sales momentum for the current family of Switches, in addition to the timeline of when it could line up for a launch with a blockbuster game like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, that I believe would be the best time to launch whatever is next, to give all of those hardcore user base a reason to go experience the brand new Zelda in the best way, and make sure you get it with the new most powerful version of the Switch, whatever that's called. I am here for it. If it's Pro, I don't think that will be the name. If it's Nintendo Switch 2, that's totally possible and I'm cool with that. Or if they're super cool, we do Super Nintendo Switch like the good old days, and I will be picking it up regardless. But I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, your personal thoughts and speculation around when you think we will see Nintendo finally launch whatever is next in terms of more powerful hardware. Not another special edition OLED that, if we don't get new hardware in 2023, I would assume we're going to get a Zelda Tears of the Kingdom special edition OLED. But what do you think Nintendo's really planning here? And do you think they are paying attention to the slowing momentum of the Nintendo Switch now being beat out by the Xbox Series family of systems in total dollar sales? And do you think that 2023 is the year for them in their minds that they launch something new? Do you think that we are potentially going to see a more incremental upgrade path with the Switch and not the hard generational break? Or do you think that Nintendo will essentially start over entirely with something new, and maybe that is not the case until 2024 or 2025, and the existing hardware we have now takes us through the rest of that timeline? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.